Married to the Billionaire Who Ruined My Life Part 1. Chapter 1, The Return of the Ghost. 5 years. That was how long she'd been gone, dead, as far as the world was concerned. But New York didn't forget so easily. The city that had once devoured her reputation with scandalous headlines and whispered gossip still buzzed with the same fevered hunger. Tonight, it would feast again. Only this time, Elena Moyo wasn't offering herself as prey. The woman who stepped out of the sleek black town car outside the Hudson Royale Hotel was no longer Elena. She was Lena Sinclair now, poised, elegant, sharp as diamond-cut glass. Her golden blonde hair was swept into a severe chignon, her lips painted the color of old blood. The gown she wore clung to her like betrayal, deep emerald satin that turned every gaze toward her with a mix of envy and unease. No one recognized her. Not yet. Inside the gala, laughter floated like champagne bubbles, expensive, empty, and hollow. Politicians mingled with power-hungry socialites, fashion icons clinked glasses with hedge fund sharks. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and secrets. Lena moved through it like a phantom. Her eyes scanned the crowd, searching, calculating. She knew who would be here. She had read the guest list 3 times. She wasn't here by accident. And then, she saw him. Damian Blackwood. The name alone made her throat tighten. There he stood at the far end of the room, flanked by men in suits who pretended to be his equals. He was dressed in black, always black, custom-tailored, of course. His dark hair had grown a little longer since the last time she'd seen him, when he'd coldly walked away as her life fell to pieces. His jaw was more chiseled now, his shoulders broader, but the arrogance remained untouched. He laughed at something someone said, the sound rich and low, like velvet hiding a dagger. He hadn't changed. But she had. He hadn't noticed her yet. Why would he? As far as Damian Blackwood knew, Elena Moyo had disappeared into oblivion after the scandal that should have ended her. After he let it. After he caused it. A waiter brushed past her, offering champagne. She took a glass and let her fingers tremble just slightly. Not from nerves, no. From restraint. From the overwhelming desire to march across the room and throw the bubbling drink in his smug, unforgiving face. But that would come later. Tonight wasn't about revenge. Not directly. It was about infiltration. Re-entry. Precision. Because if she had learned anything in 5 years of exile, it was that revenge was a dish best served in slices. And Damian Blackwood was going to choke on every single one. She turned from him, forcing herself not to stare too long, and let her eyes settle on the crowd. She needed to plant seeds, whispers of a mysterious newcomer. A woman who arrived without history, yet moved with the grace of someone born into elite bloodlines. A woman who didn't flinch under diamond-laced scrutiny. Already, she could feel eyes drifting toward her. Curious, appraising. She knew the game, had played it before, only last time, she didn't know the rules. Now, she owned the board. Lena made her way to the terrace, a place she remembered from that fateful night, the night of her public undoing. The moonlight washed over the balcony like memory. She closed her eyes for a moment. It had been here she fled to in tears, her name splashed across every gossip site, photos doctored and released with malicious precision. Homewrecker. Gold digger. Social climber. All lies. And behind it all, Damian. He hadn't defended her. Hadn't even looked back. The pain had calcified over time, hardened into something sharp and usable. "Excuse me." A man's voice startled her. He was tall, well-dressed, clearly trying too hard. "Have we met before?" Lena smiled, her lips curving with practiced mystery. "I doubt it. I would have remembered." She left him standing there, deliciously off balance, and re-entered the ballroom. Her eyes flicked to Damien once more. This time, their gazes met. His stare lingered. She tilted her head, feigning polite interest, then looked away first. Let him wonder. She moved toward the bar, heart pounding now. Not from fear, but from the rush. This was the moment she had imagined 1,000 times. Her return. Her rebirth. Her quiet, burning war. She hadn't just come back to haunt him. She had come back to bury him. And he didn't even know she was standing on his grave. Chapter 2, The Proposal from the Devil. The rain came suddenly the next morning, slicking the Manhattan skyline in wet glass and fog. Lena Sinclair, née Elena Moyo, stood at the window of her penthouse suite, watching as the city swallowed itself in silver. Her reflection hovered in the glass, pale and composed. Only the faintest tightening of her jaw betrayed the war simmering beneath her skin. The gala had gone exactly as she planned. Her entrance had stirred curiosity, her presence had left an aftertaste. And Damien Blackwood had noticed her. More than noticed. He had stared. And not the way a man stares at a stranger. There had been something else there, something she hadn't expected. Recognition. No. He didn't know who she really was. But interest. That, yes. That had been unmistakable. A knock echoed on the suite door. She turned, heels clicking softly against the marble floor. The concierge entered with a silver envelope on a tray, no name, no note, only a card stamped with the insignia of Blackwood International. The logo was understated, but Lena's eyes narrowed the moment she saw it. Damien moved fast. She waited until the door clicked shut before slicing it open. Inside was a single line of printed text, precise and cold. Lunch. Noon. 72nd floor. Blackwood Tower. No pleasantries. No name. Just an order. She smiled, slow, calculating. He had taken the bait. By the time noon approached, she was dressed in muted grey silk, tasteful, professional, the kind of look that whispered wealth without the need to shout. Her makeup was soft but strategic, her perfume was a scent Damien would never recognize, but might find familiar in the worst way. The 72nd floor of Blackwood Tower was made of shadows and glass. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a sweeping view of Manhattan, but Lena barely glanced at it. Her eyes were on the man who stood behind the long obsidian desk, phone in one hand, gaze already on her. Damien Blackwood didn't rise to greet her. Of course not. "Miss Sinclair," he said, his voice like black coffee, bitter, hot, too strong. "Thank you for coming." Lena smiled, cool and unreadable. Curiosity kills boredom. He gestured to the leather chair across from him. She sat. He did the same. There was no small talk. No offers of wine or water. "I'll be direct," he said. Good, she thought. So will I, eventually. Damien leaned back, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "I'm about to close a deal that will determine the future of my company. My board is anxious. They want to see stability. More than that, they want to see commitment." "To what?" she asked innocently. He ignored the bait. To family values. Tradition. I've managed to hold off most of the wolves circling me, but there's one in particular who's pushing for a merger. A hostile one. He has influence, money, and the moral image to sway public opinion. Let me guess, she said. He's married. Damien's lips twitched at the corner, but no smile came. Happily. And publicly. Lena tilted her head. So you need a happy, public marriage of your own. His eyes met hers then, hard, unblinking. Yes. The silence that followed stretched like violin strings on the verge of snapping. And you thought of me, she said finally. Why? Damien's stare remained unchanged. You're poised. Elegant. New. No tabloid history, no baggage. Yet you made an impression last night, on the right people. You're what the board would call a strategic partner. Lena laughed quietly. You mean a convenient puppet? He didn't deny it. She rose, slowly, walked to the window. Her heart pounded so loudly it felt like a scream, but her voice remained soft. A fake marriage. Public displays. Smiles for the cameras. And behind closed doors, what? Silence. Indifference. No one would ask questions. And when you don't need me anymore, I'll make it worth your while. The words hung in the air like gunpowder. Lena turned to face him. Her blood was ice and fire. She could almost hear her old self, screaming at her not to say yes. But that voice had died in the ashes of betrayal. This was her chance. He didn't know who she was. He didn't remember the woman whose world he'd let burn. And now he was handing her the matchstick. She smiled. All right, she said. I'll marry you. Something flickered in his expression then, something unexpected. Relief, maybe. Or doubt. Too late. Lena walked back toward him, offering her hand. Congratulations, Mr. Blackwood. You've just acquired a wife. He shook it, his grip strong, cold. Neither of them said what they were thinking. She thought, I'm going to destroy you from the inside out. He thought, God help me, she reminds me of someone I lost. The contract would be drawn up by the end of the week. But the war had already begun. Chapter 3, The Ice Wedding. The wedding took place on a Wednesday. No one who truly loved the institution would ever choose a Wednesday. It wasn't a day meant for confetti or lace or forever vows, it was the kind of day you married for convenience, not for love. For image, not intimacy. It was exactly the day Lena had expected. The ceremony was held at Damien Blackwood's private estate in the Catskills, remote, modern, and ruthlessly curated. The interior was a minimalist masterpiece of white marble, steel, and glass, all sharp edges and echoing silence. There were no flowers. No music. No guests. Only signatures. 2 pens. 2 signatures. And a photographer hired not for art, but optics. Lena stood in the center of the glass-walled room, sunlight pouring over her in slanted angles. Her dress was a winter storm of satin and crystal, stunning, sculpted, but utterly without warmth. A gown to be admired, not embraced. She wore no veil. No ring yet. Across from her, Damien Blackwood looked more like a CEO at a quarterly press conference than a groom. He wore a tailored black suit with surgical precision, no boutonniere, no smile. Just that unreadable expression, like he was observing a hostile acquisition and waiting for the paperwork to go through. The officiant was a lawyer in a tailored grey skirt suit. She recited the legalities with all the passion of a tax return. Lena's heart should have been pounding. Her hands should have been shaking. Instead, she felt a curious stillness. Almost like grief. Not for love lost, no, that had died 5 years ago. What she mourned now was the sheer coldness of it all. Her wedding day, technically her second, though the first had been aborted by scandal, felt more like a business merger than the beginning of any kind of life. But then again, wasn't that the point? She glanced at Damien as he signed the final page of the contract. His jaw was tight, his signature elegant and sure. He didn't look at her. Not once. Not even when he passed the pen. Lena signed beneath his name. Her new legal name, Lena Sinclair Blackwood. The name felt foreign. Heavy. A lie, and a weapon. When the final document was sealed and notarized, the lawyer cleared her throat. As per state and federal law, and with this contract as binding, I pronounce you legally married. That was it. No kiss. No hand-holding. Not even a nod. Just silence. The photographer stepped forward. Damien slid a platinum ring onto Lena's finger, a custom piece he had commissioned, though Lena suspected a PR firm had chosen the design. She reciprocated, placing a matching band onto his hand with the precision of a surgeon dressing a wound. Flash. Flash. The camera clicked, capturing their expressions, blank, polished, perfect. The image would soon appear on business pages and society blogs, labeled, Power Couple or Strategic Alliance. Inside the surprise Blackwood marriage. No one would guess the truth. No one would know the heat that simmered beneath the ice. Because even though neither of them smiled, even though the ceremony had been colder than a courtroom, something unspoken hung between them. A tension. A pull. Lena had felt it when their hands touched, just for a second, as they exchanged rings. It was like electricity, but not the warm, romantic kind. This was static, volatile, the kind that could start a fire or blow out the power entirely. And Damien had felt it too. She saw it in the way his eyes had flickered, just once, before he looked away. After the photos were done, Damien escorted her to the drawing room where champagne waited. They each took a glass, clinked with a forced grace, and drank in silence. "Congratulations," he said finally, voice low and flat. Lena raised her glass in mock salute. "To mutual benefit." He didn't reply. Instead, he turned and walked away, leaving her in the middle of the room, alone with the echo of clinking crystal and the bitter taste of victory. She had done it. She had married the man who had destroyed her life. And he still didn't know who she really was. But now she was closer than ever. In his house. In his life. Sleeping beside him, beneath the same roof. The war had officially begun. And if Lena had anything to say about it, it would end not with divorce, but with ruin. His. Chapter 4, The Haunted Past. The Blackwood estate was a fortress of taste and restraint. Every room felt curated to perfection, like a museum dedicated to power. Art lined the walls, but none of it was sentimental. Stark modern pieces hung in minimalist frames, fragmented faces, sculptures that twisted upward like silent screams. There were no photographs. No family portraits. No warmth. Lena wandered its long, quiet halls like a ghost in her own home. It had been a week since the wedding. 7 days of silence, of dinners eaten across a long, gleaming table with nothing but the occasional clink of silverware and the cold glint in Damien's eyes. He was polite, distant. a man perfectly trained to show nothing unless it served him. And yet, Lena had started to notice things. He always came home late, but never drunk. He worked obsessively, but not out of ambition, more like escape. Some nights, he didn't sleep at all. His office light burned until dawn, casting long shadows across the marble hallway like haunted fingerprints. And he never mentioned her past. Never asked her about family, friends, or even why she had no one. As if her silence was not only accepted, but expected. It unsettled her. She had come here to wage war. To destroy him from the inside. But now that she was inside, nothing felt quite right. Her plan had been clear: get close, gain access, find proof of his betrayal, and use it. But the deeper she sank into the mansion's elegant stillness, the more she began to question the version of the past she had replayed 1,000 times. The scandal had ruined her. 5 years ago, she had been on the cusp of launching her own luxury event firm, Moyo and Company. Investors lined up. Clients courted her. She was 1 week from signing the lease on a Fifth Avenue space when the photos broke. Photos of her in a compromising position with a married senator. Headlines screamed affair. And gold digger. And sex for contracts. The senator denied everything. Elena Moyo disappeared overnight. Her accounts were frozen. Her contacts went silent. Her reputation bled out in real time. And behind it all had been Damien Blackwood. Or so she'd believed. Because Damien had been more than her secret fiancé, he had been the man who introduced her to the senator. Who insisted she go to that gala alone. Who vanished from the venue that night without a trace. Who never returned her calls. Who watched, silent, as her name was dragged through mud and her future ripped apart. But now, in the quiet of his mansion, Lena began to feel something strange creeping into the edges of her certainty. It began with a file. She had been searching through the private library, ostensibly looking for a novel, actually looking for anything. She found a locked drawer in the bottom of an antique cabinet. The key was still in the lock, absurdly unsecured. She opened it, expecting financials. Instead, she found a small black folder marked simply, M. Her initials. No, her old initials. Heart hammering, Lena opened the folder. Inside were pages of printouts. News articles. Paparazzi photos. Blog posts. Social media threads. All from the week her scandal broke. And every page was marked in red pen: notes, corrections, timestamps, circled faces. One line caught her eye. Timestamp on photo doesn't match, lighting inconsistent. Another. Senator's alibi equals false. Check call logs. There was even a copy of a hotel security tape receipt with a handwritten note. Find missing 10 minutes. Lena froze. This wasn't evidence to use against her. This was someone trying to uncover the truth. A dozen pieces of information sat before her, fragments she had never seen. Questions she had never thought to ask. And someone, Damien, had been asking them. Why? Why would the man who destroyed her reputation be the one questioning the official story? Her breath caught as she flipped to the last page. Tucked between 2 printouts was a photo, torn down the middle. It showed her, Elena, from 5 years ago. Hair darker, smile fuller, eyes still unguarded. She was standing in front of the old Moyo and Company office, laughing, sun on her face. Someone had kept this. carried it, torn it, but never thrown it away. She replaced everything with trembling fingers, locking the drawer behind her. That night, she barely touched her food at dinner. Damien sat across from her, reading a legal brief between bites of grilled salmon, his expression unreadable. He didn't mention the file. And neither did she. But the certainty that had once lit her path like fire was flickering. What if he hadn't framed her? What if he hadn't abandoned her? What if he had been trying to find her? No. It couldn't be. But then again, the photo in the drawer, the annotations, the sleepless nights. The Damien she had built in her mind, the ruthless, cold-blooded destroyer, was beginning to show cracks. Not sympathy. Not redemption. But depth. Layers. Secrets. And if Damien Blackwood hadn't destroyed her, then who had? Lena's grip tightened around her fork. She had returned with a plan to ruin him. Now, for the first time, she realized something far more dangerous. She didn't know the full story. And the truth might not only rewrite the past. It might destroy everything she thought she knew. Chapter 5, The Locked Drawer. The house was asleep. Or so it seemed. Outside, the wind had picked up, dragging dry leaves across the stone terrace with a restless hush. Somewhere down the hall, the old grandfather clock in the east wing struck midnight, 3 long, deliberate chimes that echoed through marble and silence. Lena lay awake, motionless in the cavernous guest wing Damien insisted she use. She was his wife now, on paper, but they lived as strangers with shared secrets and careful distance. Her room was tasteful, untouched, and cold. Like a hotel designed by someone who had never actually felt anything. But tonight, her mind burned. The file. The photo. The notes. The drawer. There had been too much intention in how it was hidden. Not completely, but just enough, left behind like a whisper, like it was meant to be found by someone who wouldn't stop at the surface. That someone was her. Lena rose from the bed, slipping into a charcoal silk robe and barefoot down the hallway. The study was at the far end of the house, Damien's private sanctum. She'd seen him disappear into it night after night. She'd heard the soft click of the lock, the murmured phone calls, the silence that always followed. But tonight, the door was ajar. It hadn't been left open earlier. She hesitated only a moment before stepping inside. The study smelled of leather, ink, and the faintest trace of his cologne. Shelves lined the walls, filled with heavy books no one read. The desk sat in the center of the room like a throne, sleek, black, and commanding. Behind it, tall windows stared out at the forest, now a sea of shadow. Lena moved silently, heart pounding beneath her ribs like a warning drum. She went straight to the drawer. The lower left. That was where she had found the file days ago. She opened it again. Gone. The file was gone. Her breath caught, but then she noticed something new. A second, even lower compartment, barely visible beneath the velvet lining of the drawer's base. The kind of compartment you'd only find if you knew it was there. Or were looking very hard. She pressed along the edge until she heard it, a soft click. The false bottom lifted. And there it was. A torn photograph, folded and worn from being handled too many times. Lena opened it with trembling fingers. It was her. Not the Lena she was now, but Elena, before the fall. Before the scandal. The woman she used to be, when her eyes still sparkled with ambition and unshattered dreams. She was laughing in the photo, mid-laugh, head thrown back, sunlight caught in her hair. She was standing in front of her old studio, holding a bouquet of white ponies. Her favorite. The photo had been torn precisely down the middle. Her image remained. Whoever had held it had kept her, and discarded what stood beside her. She ran her thumb along the ragged edge of the tear. Why would Damien keep this? Why would the man she blamed for everything, the man who left her to rot, hold on to a photo of her that he could only have taken himself? Unless... No. Lena refused to soften. Not yet. Not because of some photograph hidden in a drawer. But still, it didn't make sense. This was not a man who clung to sentiment. This was not someone who mourned. Yet this picture had not been thrown away. It had been hidden. Protected. Like a relic. She should have left it at that. She should have closed the drawer, put the photograph back, and retreated to her room before he. The door creaked behind her. She froze. Her spine straightened. Slowly, she turned. Damien stood in the doorway, shirt sleeves rolled to the elbow, tie loose around his neck, collar unbuttoned. His expression unreadable, but his eyes locked on hers, and then drifted downward to what she held in her hand. He didn't speak. Neither did she. A beat passed. 2. Then, what are you doing? His voice was quiet. Controlled. Too controlled. Lena's pulse thudded in her ears, but she forced a mask of calm. Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd find something to read. Damien stepped forward, slowly, gaze still on the torn photo in her hand. You went through my desk. You left the door open, she replied. I didn't mean to. No, she said softly. But I think you meant for me to find this. He didn't answer. Lena studied him, really studied him. His jaw was tight. His eyes were tired. But beneath all of it, there was something raw. Exposed. You kept it, she said. All these years. He looked away. I don't keep things, he murmured. You should know that by now. But you kept this. Another silence. Then Damien turned his back to her, walking to the window, hands clasped behind him like he was holding back a truth with his own fists. Lena's chest ached with a confusing tangle of emotions, rage, betrayal, confusion, and something colder. Fear. Because if Damien hadn't been the one who framed her, if he had loved her, if he had lost her, then who had destroyed her life? And why? She placed the photograph gently on the desk, watching him from across the room. His figure was rigid, silhouetted against the dark glass. A man haunted. A man hiding. Lena turned and left the room without another word, heart pounding with a truth more dangerous than any she had known. She had spent 5 years hating a ghost. But the real monster was still out there. And she had just married the wrong enemy. Chapter 6, The Fiancé Who Vanished. The dream came like smoke. Soft at first, curling at the edges of her sleep like forgotten perfume, then choking, heavy, inescapable. Lena sat bolt upright in bed, drenched in sweat, heart clawing against her chest. The silk sheets tangled around her legs like restraints. The room was quiet, but her ears still rang with phantom echoes. She had been there again. That night. The night everything fell apart. For days now, memories had been circling her like vultures, growing more vivid since she found the torn photograph. But tonight they came in full force. Not just as flashes, but as a total return. She climbed out of bed, wrapped a rope around her, and walked barefoot to the window. Moonlight painted the grounds in silver and shadow. Somewhere out there, Damien was likely still awake, working, hiding, remembering. Just like her. Her hand drifted to the glass as her mind gave in, dragging her backward. Back 5 years. It had been the biggest night of her life. The Winter Haven Charity Gala, held in the grand atrium of the Langford Hotel. High ceilings, gold trim, towering centerpieces of frosted orchids and candlelight. Her name was finally printed on the guest list, not as a +1, but as the rising star of New York's event industry. She had worked for it. Starved for it. Sacrificed everything. And she wasn't attending alone. Her fiancé, Damien Blackwood, had promised he'd be by her side. Quietly. Secretly. He wasn't ready to make their relationship public, his family, his company, his image. But he had whispered to her in the dark nights before, "I'll be there. You'll never be alone again." So she had worn white. A dangerous choice, but she had wanted to feel like a bride for one night. A stolen moment, even if no one else knew. And for the first hour, everything sparkled. Her name was on every tongue. Her laugh lit up the room. Investors eyed her with respect, not lust. She had made it. Until he didn't show. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Her messages went unread. Her calls went unanswered. She smiled through the pain, made excuses, even told someone he was caught in traffic. But inside, something began to curdle. And then the flashbulbs came. A swirl of photographers appeared at the entrance, far too aggressive for a charity event. Guests turned. Phones buzzed. Whispers bloomed like toxic vines. Lena didn't understand, until someone grabbed her wrist. "Is this you?" a voice demanded. A screen was shoved in her face. It was a photo. Of her. In a hotel suite. Sitting too close to Senator Marcus Kellerman, laughing, champagne glass in hand, his hand brushing her knee. She wore the same dress as tonight. But she had never been in that suite. The headline burned. Event planners' dirty dealings, sex, power, and political favors. Her blood turned to ice. "No," she whispered. "This is fake. This isn't, this didn't happen." But the room was already turning. Faces she knew contorted into masks of disgust. Guests pulled away from her like she was contagious. Her reputation, her entire life, began to shatter in real time. She fled. Shoes in hand, dress dragging behind her, she raced through the halls of the Langford like a hunted animal. Her heart pounded in her ears, drowning out the murmurs and the cruel laughter. But she had one thought. Find Damien. He would explain. He would help. He would fix this. She called again. Voicemail. She texted. No response. She reached the loading dock, breathless, shaking, and there, in the alley behind the building, sat his car. Parked. Waiting. Relief bloomed, until she opened the door. He wasn't there. Only the driver. "Mr. Blackwood left 15 minutes ago," Miss the man said. Said he had a call. Lena's stomach dropped. "He left. I believe he said, something came up." Something came up. As her world exploded, her fiancé had vanished. No note. No explanation. No defense. Just, gone. The last thing she remembered was collapsing into the back seat, mascara streaking her cheeks, whispering his name over and over again like a prayer no God was answering. Now, standing in the darkened room 5 years later, Lena pressed her palm to the windowpane. That memory had been her origin story. Her heartbreak. Her rage. The reason she had rebuilt herself from ashes and secrets. The reason she had come back with venom and fire and a fake name. Because Damian Blackwood had left her to drown. And yet. What if he hadn't? What if something had kept him from returning? Or worse, what if he'd been played too? She shook her head. No. No, she couldn't afford to soften. Not yet. She needed facts. Evidence. Not feelings. And yet the past had changed color in her memory. Not erased. But, reframed. The fiancé who vanished might not have abandoned her out of cruelty. He might have been erased just as thoroughly as she had. And if that was true, then neither of them had been the villain that night. Someone else had been pulling the strings. And Lena was going to find out who. Because every broken heart deserves a comeback. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional romance every week. Hit like, drop a comment, and ring the bell so you never miss a moment of betrayal, redemption, and powerful love. And don't keep the drama to yourself, share this story with someone who lives for twists just like you. Thanks for listening, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is becoming unforgettable.